First, welcome in. As you can see in the pinned message, we have some disclaimer that I'm going to read, some infos. First, that you can also see if you do exclamation mark reading command. So, hi and welcome in. Here's a few info before starting. 1. Ellie will do her best to read the chat. Thank you, Johnny. Ellie will do her best to read the chat, but she won't break the flow of the reading, so please be patient. 2. For the same reason, alerts are off for tonight's stream. So I'm going to see everything that is going to happen, and I'm going to react when the time is right. 3. This is the first time that we do this format, so please be kind in every feedback now. This was more for the external people. But also, yeah, as you probably know, if you've been here in the last 2/3 streams, I am hyped for this. And at the same time, I'm kind of shitting myself. So just, yeah, be patient with me, with my brain, with my tiredness level, and everything. So I'll do my best. This wants to be chill for me, for you, and for me. Then, introduction, people. Tonight, important information. I should have created a comment. Sinead and Johnny, I am sorry, but here's your credits. The fairy tales that we're going to read tonight are part of the Snow White fairy tale collection that Johnny and Sydney curated together for the, I hope I'm saying good things. Anyway, for the last point of our challenge, that is the Snow White reading challenge. So this is a collection of fairy tales that you can find available on our Discord server. If you want to join the book club, if you want to join aside from the book club, from the challenge, from the library hive, if you just want to enjoy something that is manually curated by the community itself, you find it available on Discord. And I am sure that Sine or Johnny can point that out in the Discord channels. Let's go. Snow White, a collection of fairy tales created by University. With the sincere hope to cuddle your heart in the cold winter days, this file has found its way to your reader eyes. From well-known classics to our favorite stories that deserve more love, Sydney and Johnny have selected 6 fairy tales keepers of the warmth typical of hope, childlike dreams, and cozy times. Feel hugged, cuddle up, and enjoy. We start with Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm. And the first story that we read is Mother Holle. There was once a widow who had 2 daughters, one of whom was pretty and industrious, whilst the other was ugly and idle. But she was much fonder of the ugly and idle one, because she was her own daughter, and the other, who was a stepdaughter, was obliged to do all the work and be the Cinderella of the house. Every day the poor girl had to sit by a well in the highway and spin till her fingers bled. Now it happened that one day the shuttle was marked with her blood, so she dipped it in the well to wash the mark off. But it dropped out of her hand and fell to the bottom. She began to weep and ran to her stepmother and told her about the mishap. But she scolded her sharply and was so merciless as to say, "Since you have let the shuttle fall in, you must fetch it out again." So the girl went back to the well and did not know what to do. And in the sorrow of her heart, she jumped into the well to get the shuttle. She lost her senses, and when she awoke and came to herself again, she was in a lovely meadow, where the sun was shining and many thousands of flowers were growing. Alongside this meadow she went, and at last came to a baker's oven full of bread, and the bread cried out, Oh, take me out, or I shall burn. I have been baked a long time. So she went up to it and took out all the loaves one after another with the bread shovel. After that she went on till she came to a tree covered with apples, which called out to her, "Oh, shake me, we apples are all ripe." So she shook the tree till the apples fell like rain, and went on shaking till they were all down. And when she had them gathered into a heap, she went on her way. At last she came to a little house, out of which an old woman peeped. But she had such large teeth that the girl was frightened, and was about to run away. But the old woman called out to her, "What are you afraid of, dear child? Stay with me. If you will do all the work in the house properly, you shall be the better for it. Only you must take care of and to make my bed well, and to shake it truthfully till the feathers fly, for then there is snow on the earth. I am Mother Holle." As the old woman spoke so kindly to her, the girl took courage and agreed to enter her service. She attended to everything to the satisfaction of her mistress, and always shook her bed so vigorously that the feathers flew about like snowflakes. So she had a pleasant life with her, never an angry word, and boiled or roast meat every day. She stayed some time with Mother Olle, and then she became sad. At first she didn't know what was the matter with her, but found at length that it was homesickness. Although she was many thousand times better off here than at home, she still had a longing to be there. At last she said to the old woman, "I have a longing for home, and however well off I am down here, I cannot stay any longer. I must go up again to meet my own people." Mother Olle said, "I am pleased that you long for your home again, and as you have been served me so truly, I myself will take you up again." Thereupon she took her by the hand and led her to a large door. The door was opened, and just as the maiden was standing beneath the doorway, a heavy shower of golden rain fell, and all the gold rained sticking to her, so that she was completely covered over it. "You shall have that because you are so industrious," said Mother Olle, and at the same time she gave her back the shuttle which she had let fall into the well. Thereupon the door closed, and the maiden found herself up above upon the hearth, not far from her mother's house. And as she went into the yard, the cock was standing by the well side, and cried, "Cook-a-doodle-doo, the golden girl come back to you." So she went to her mother, and as she arrived, thus covered with gold, she was well received both by her and her sister. The girl told all that had happened to her, and as soon as the mother heard how she had come by so much wealth, she was very anxious to obtain the same good luck for the ugly and lazy daughter. She had to sit herself by the well and spin, and in order that her shuttle might be stained with blood, she stuck her hand into the thorn bush and pricked her finger. Then she threw her shuttle into the well and jumped after it. She came, like the other, to the beautiful meadow, and walked along the very same path. When she got to the oven, the bread cried again, "Oh, take me out, or I shall burn. I have been baked a long time." But the lazy thing answered, "As if I had any wish to make myself dirty," and on she went. Soon she came to the apple tree, which cried, "Oh, shake me, we apples are ripe." But she answered, "I like that, one of you might fall on my head," and so went on. When she came to Mother Holle's house, she was not afraid, for she had already heard of her big teeth, and she hied herself to her immediately. The first day she forced herself to work diligently, and obeyed Mother Holle when she told her to do anything, for she was thinking of all the gold that she would given her. But on the second day she began to be lazy, and on the third day still more so, and then she would not get up in the morning at all. Neither did she make Mother Holle's bed as she ought, and did not shake it so as to make the feathers fly up. Mother Holle was soon tired of this, and gave her notice to leave. The lazy girl was willing enough to go, and thought now the golden rain would come. Mother Holle led her to the great door, but while she was standing beneath it, instead of the gold, a big ketful of pitch was empty over her. "That is the reward for your service," said Mother Holle, and shut the door. So the lazy girl went home, but she was quite covered with pitch, and the cock by the well side, as soon as saw her, cried out, "Cock-a-doodle-doo, the pitch's curse come back to you." But the pitch stuck fast to her, and could not be got off as long as she lived. I swear, I struggle. You have no idea how many times I read that little part that the cock says, because I was so scared. This was the first one. We did it. It didn't take much time, actually. I don't know. I wanted to see how much. Um, but yeah. You love this fairy tale so much when I was a kid. You know that I never heard about this fairy tale. It's the first time that I read about it. The next one, yes, I know it. The first one, though, I'm not sure. The second one, and the second one, I know it. It's the way of saying cocode. That would have been easy. That will definitely be easier. Never heard Frau Holle? I mean, heard, yes, it's not the first time, but I never heard the story. I never knew what that was about. I am kicking Stitch. Anyway, are you ready for the other one? For the next one? Actually, this is like one of my favorite ones. From what I saw, from what I read, actually. I read two. We have always by the Grimm brothers, the Elves. We have, I don't know how many story, for sure two. Of course, we start with the first one. A shoemaker, by no fault of his own, had become so poor that at last he had nothing left but leather for one pair of shoes. So in the evening he cut out the shoes which he wished to begin to make the next morning, and as he had a good conscience, he lay down quietly in his bed, commended himself to God, and fell asleep. In the morning, where he had said his prayers and was just going to sit down to work, the shoes stood quite finished on his table. He was house-standed and did not know what to say to it. He took the shoes in his hand to observe them closer, and they were so neatly made that there was no one bad stitch in them, just as if they were intended as a masterpiece. Soon after, too, a buyer came by, and as the shoes pleased him so well, he paid more for them than was customary, and with the money, the shoemaker was able to purchase leather for 2 pair of shoes. He cut them out at night, and next morning was about to set to work with fresh courage, but he had no need to do so, for when he got up, they were already made, and buyers were also not wanting, who gave him money enough to buy leather for 4 pair of shoes. The following morning, too, he found the 4 pairs made, and so it went on constantly. What he cut out in the evening was finished by the morning, so that he soon had his honest independence again, and at last became a wealthy man. Now, It befell that one evening not long before Christmas, when the man had been cutting out, he said to his wife before going to bed, "What think you if we were to stay up tonight to see who it is that lent us this helping hand?" The woman liked the idea and lighted a candle, and then they hid themselves in the corner of the room behind some clothes which were hanging up there, and watched. When it was midnight, two pretty little naked men came, sat down by the shoemaker's table, took all the work which was cut out before them, and began to stitch and sew and hammer so skillfully and so quickly with their little fingers that the shoemaker could not turn away his eyes for astonishment. They did not stop until all was done, and stood finished on the table, and then they ran quickly away. The next morning, the woman said, "The little men have made us rich, and we really must show that we are grateful for it. They run about so, and have nothing on, and must be cold. I'll tell thee what I'll do. I will make them little shirts, and coats, and vests, and trousers, and knit both of them a pair of stockings. And do too, make them two little pairs of shoes." The man said, "I shall be very glad to do it." And one night, when everything was ready, they laid their presents all together on the table instead of the cut-out work, and then concealed themselves to see how the little man would behave. At midnight they came bounding in, and wanted to get their worth at once, but as they did not find any leather cut out, but only the pretty little articles of clothing, they were at first astonished, and then they showed intense delight. They dressed themselves with the greatest rapidity, putting the pretty clothes on, and singing, "Now we're boys so fine to see, why should we longer cobblers be?" Then they danced and skipped and leapt over chairs and benches. At last they danced out of doors. From that time forth they came no more, but as long as the shoemaker lived, all went well with him, and all his undertakings prospered. We have the second story. Are you ready? This is the second story of the Elves. That I don't remember if I know or not. Let's go. There was once a poor servant girl who was industrious and cleanly, and swept the house every day and emptied her whippings on the great heap in front of the door. One morning, when she was just going back to her work, she found a letter to this heap, and as she could not read, she put her broom in the corner and took the letter to her master and mistress, and behold it was an invitation from the Elves, who asked the girl to hold a child for them at its christening. The girl did not know what to do, but at length, after much persuasion, and as they told her that it was not right to refuse an invitation of this kind, she consented. Then 3 elves came and conducted her to a hollow mountain, where the little folks lived. Everything there was small, but more elegant and beautiful that can be described. The baby's mother laid in a bed of black ebony ornamented with pearls. The cover's lids were embroidered with gold. The cradle was of ivory, the bath of gold. The girl stood as godmother, and then wanted to go home again, but the little elves urgently entreated her to stay 3 days with them. So she stayed, and passed the time in pleasure and gaiety, and the little folks did all they could to make her happy. At last she set out on her way home. Then first they filled her pockets quite full of memory, and after that they led her out of the mountain again. When she got home, she wanted to begin her work, and took the broom, which was still standing in the corner, in her hand, and began to whip. Then some stranger came out of the house, who asked her who she was and what business she had there. And she had not, as she thought, been 3 days with the little man in the mountains, but 7 years, and in the meantime her former master had died. Well, I definitely didn't know this one. Definitely didn't know this one. Not unexpected, but third story. Let's go. Then I don't remember what we have. You know what? Let me get. I closed it again. Ah, no, it was on Discord, right? Yes. I think it was on Discord. Okay, it's going to be too long to find. I wanted the index, but that's okay. Third story. A certain mother's child had been taken away out of its cradle by the elves, and a changeling with a large head and starry eyes, which would do nothing but eat and drink, laid in its place. In her trouble she went to her neighbor and asked her advice. The neighbor said that she was to carry the changeling, I am struggling with this word, changeling into the kitchen, set it down on the hearth, light a fire, boil some water in 2 eggshells, which will take the changeling laugh, and if he laughed, all would be over with him. The woman did everything that her neighbor bade her. When she put the eggshell with water on the fire, the imp said, "I'm so whole now as the western forest, but never yet have I seen any one boil anything in a eggshell." And he began to laugh at it. Whilst he was laughing, suddenly came a host of little elves, who brought the right child, set it down on the hearth, and took the changeling away with them. Title Index, thank you. Welcome in. Thank you so much for the follow. Cine, I appreciate a lot. Thank you. I was lazy. People, the next one is a big one. The next one is taking the name, it's giving the name to the challenge. The next story is Snow White. But first, let me drink. Let's go. You ready? Did you refill your water? Are you drinking? Are you self-caring? I hope you are. We have self-care night going on Discord. So you better be self-caring, even if you're not on Discord. Snow White. Once upon a time, in the middle of winter, when the flakes of snow were falling like feathers from the sky, a queen sat at a window sewing, and the frame of the window was made of black ebony. And while she was sewing and looking out of the window at the snow, she pricked her finger with a needle, and 3 drops of blood fell upon the snow. And the red looked pretty upon the white snow, and she thought to herself, would that I had a child as white as snow, as red as blood, and as black as the wood of the window frame. Soon after that, she had a little daughter, who was white as snow, and as red as blood, and her hair was as black as ebony, and she was therefore called Little Snow White. And when the child was born, the queen died. After a year had passed, the king took to himself another wife. She was a beautiful woman, but proud and haughty, and she could not bear that anyone else should surpass her in beauty. She had a wonderful looking glass, and when she stood in front of it and looked at herself in it, and said, looking glass on the wall, who in this land is the fairest of all?" the glass-looking answered, "Thou, O Queen, art the fairest of all." Then she was satisfied, for she knew that the looking-glass spoke the truth. But Snow White was growing up and grew more and more beautiful. And when she was 7 years old, she was as beautiful as the day, and more beautiful than the queen herself. And once, when the queen asked her looking glass, "Looking glass on the wall, who in this land is the fairest of all?" it answered, "Thou art fairer than all who are here, Queen Lady, but more beautiful still is Snow White, as I ween." Then the queen was shocked and turned yellow and green with envy. From that hour, whenever she looked at Snow White, her heart heaved in her breast, and she hated the girl so much. And envy and pride grew higher and higher in her heart as like a wheat, so that she had no peace day or night. She called the huntsman and said, "Take the child away into the forest. I will no longer have her in my sight. Kill her and bring me back her heart as a token." The huntsman obeyed and took her away, but when he had drawn his knife and was about to pierce Snow White's innocent heart, she began to weep and said, "Ah, dear husband, leave me my life. I will run away into the wild forest and never come home again." And as she was so beautiful, the huntsman had pity on her and said, "Run away then, you poor child. The wild beast will soon have devoured you," thought he, and yet it seems as if a stone had been rolled from his heart, since it was no longer needful of him to kill her. And as a young bird just then came running by, he stopped it, and cut out his heart, and took it to the queen as a proof of the child that the child was dead. The cook had to salt his, and the wicked queen ate it, and thought she had eaten the heart of Snow White. But now the poor child was all alone in the great forest, and so terrified that she looked at every leaf of every tree, and did not know what to do. Then she began to run, and ran over sharp stones and through thorns, and the wild beasts ran past her, but did her no harm. She ran as long as her feet would go, until it was almost evening. Then she saw a little cottage, and went in to rest herself. Everything in the cottage was small, but neater and cleaner than can be told. There was a table on which was a white cover, and 7 little plates, and on each plate a little spoon. Moreover, there were 7 little knives and forks, and 7 little mugs. Again the wall stood 7 little beds side by side, and covered with snow white counterpanes. Little Snow White was so hungry and thirsty that she ate some vegetables and bread from each plate, and drank a drop of wine from each mug, for she did not wish to take all from one only. Then, as she was so tired, she laid herself down on one of the little beds, but none of them suited her. One was too long, another too short, but at last she found that the 7 ones was right, so she remained it and said a prayer and went to sleep. When it was quite dark, the owners of the cottage came back. They were 7 dwarfs, who dug and delved in the mountains for ore. They lit their 7 candles, and as it was now light within the cottage, they saw that someone had been there, for everything was not in the same order in which they had left it. The first said, "Who has been sitting on my chair?" The second, "Who has been eating off my plate?" The third, "Who has been taking some of my bread?" The fourth, "Who has been eating my vegetables?" The fifth, "Who has been using my fork?" The sixth, "Who has been cutting with my knife?" The seventh, "Who has been drinking out of my mug?" Then the first looked around and saw that there was a little hole in his bed, and he said, "Who has been getting into my bed?" The others came up, and each called out, "Somebody has been lying into my bed too." But the seventh, when he looked at his bed, saw little Snow White, who was sleeping, who was lying asleep the rain. And he called the others, who came running up, and they cried out with astonishment, and bought they 7 little candles, and let the light fall on little Snow White. "Oh heavens!" cried they. "What a lovely child!" And they were so glad that they need not wake her up, but let her sleep on the bed. And the 7th dwarf slept with his companion 1 hour with each, so he got through the night. When it was morning, little Snow White awoke, and was frightened when she saw 7 dwarfs. But they were friendly, and asked her what her name was. "My name is Snow White," she answered. "How have you come to our house?" said the dwarf. Then she told them that her stepmother had wished to have her killed, but the huntsman had spared her life, and that she had run away the whole day, until at last she found their dwelling. The dwarf said, if you will take care of our house, cook, make beds, wash, sew, and knit, and if you will keep everything neat and clean, you can stay with us, and you shall want for nothing." "Yes," said Snow White, "with all my heart." And she stayed with them. She kept the house in order for them. In the mornings they went to the mountain and looked for copper and gold. In the evenings they came back, and then their supper had to be ready. The girl was alone the whole day, so the good dwarfs warned her and said, "Beware of your stepmother. She will soon know that you're here. Be sure to let no one come in." But the queen, believing that she had eaten Snow White's heart, could not but think that she was again the first and most beautiful of all, and she went to her looking glass and said, looking glass of the wall, on the wall, who in this land is the fairest of all?" And the glass answered, "O queen, thou art fairest of all I see, but over the hills where the 7 dwarfs dwell, Snow White is still alive and well, and none is so fair as she." Then she was astounded, for she knew that the looking glass never spoke falsely, and she knew that the huntsman had betrayed her, and that little Snow White was still alive. And so she thought and thought again how she might kill her, for so long as she was not the fairest of the whole land, envy and vie had left her no rest. And when she had at last thought of something to do, she painted her face and dressed herself like an old pleasure woman, and no one could have known her. In this disguise she went over the 7 mountains to the 7 dwarfs, and knocked at the window and cried, "Pretty things to sell, very cheap, very cheap." Little Snow White looked out of the window and called out, Good day, my good woman. What have you to sell?" "Good things, pretty things," she answered. "Stay laces of all colors." And she pulled out one which was woven of bright colored silk. I may let the worthy old woman in," thought Snow White, as she unbolted the door and bought the pretty laces. "Child," said the old woman, "what a fright you look. Come, I will lace you properly for once." Snow White had no suspicion, but stood before her and let herself be laced with the new laces. But the old woman laced so quickly and laced so tightly that Snow White lost her breath and fell down as if dead. "Now I'm the most beautiful," said the queen to herself, and ran away. Not long afterwards, in the evening, the 7 dwarfs came home. But how shocked they were when they saw their dear little Snow White lying on the ground, and that she neither stirred nor moved, and seems to be dead. They lifted her up, and as they saw that she was laced too tightly, they cut the laces. Then she began to breathe a little, and after a while came to life again. When the dwarf heard what had happened, they said, "The old pleather woman was no one else but the wicked queen. Take care and let no one come in when we're not with you." But the wicked woman, when she had reached home, went in front of a glass and asked, looking glass on the wall, "Who in this land is the fairest of all?" And it answered as before, "O queen, thou art fairest of all I see, but over the hills where the 7 dwarfs dwell, Snow White is still alive and well, and none is so fair as she." Then she heard that. When she heard that, all her blood rushed to her heart with fear, for she saw plainly that little Snow White was again alive. "But now," she said, "I will think of something that shall put an end to yon." And by the help of witchcraft, which she understood, she made a poisonous comb. Then she disguised herself and took the shape of another old woman. So she went over the 7 mountains to the 7 dwarfs, knocked at the door, and cried, "Good things to sell, cheap, cheap." Little Snow White looked out and said, "Go away, I cannot let anyone come in." "I suppose you can look," said the old woman, and pulled the poisonous comb out and held it up. It pleased the girl so well that she let herself be beguiled and opened the door. When they had made a bargain, the old woman said, "Now I will comb you properly at once." Poor little Snow White had no suspicion, and let the old woman do as she pleased. But hardly had she put their comb in their hair that the poisoning took effect, and the girl fell down senseless. "You paragon of beauty," said the wicked woman, "you're done for now," and she went away. But fortunately, it was almost evening when the 7 dwarfs came home. When they saw Snow White lying as if dead upon the ground, they at once suspected the stepmother, and they looked and found the poisonous comb. Scarcely had they taken it out when Snow White came to herself and told them what happened. Then they warned her once more to be upon her guard and to open the door, not to no one. The queen at home went in front of the glass and said, looking glass on the wall, "Who in this land is the fairest of all?" Then it answered as before, "O queen, thou art fairest of all I see, but over the hills when the 7 dwarfs dwell, Snow White is still alive and well, and none is so fair as she." When she heard the glass speak thus, she trembled and shook with rage. "Snow White shall die," she cried, "even if it cost me my life." Thereupon she went into a quite secret, lonely room, where no one ever came, and there she made a very poisonous apple. Outside it looked pretty, white with red cheek, so that everyone who saw it longed for it. But whoever ate a piece of it must surely die. When the apple was ready, she painted her face and dressed herself up as a countrywoman, and so she went over the 7 mountains to the 7 dwarfs. She knocked at the door. Snow White put her hand out of the window and said, "I cannot let anyone in. The 7 dwarfs have forbidden me." "It's all the same to me," answered the woman. "I shall soon get rid of my apples. There, I will give you one." "No," said Snow White, "I dare not take anything." "Are you afraid of poison?" said the old woman. "Look, I will cut the apple in 2 pieces. You eat the red cheek, and I will eat the white." The apple was so cunningly made that only the red cheek was poisoned. Snow White longed for a fine apple, and when she saw that the woman ate part of it, she could resist no longer, and stretched out her hand and took the poisonous half. But hardly had she a bit of it in her mouth when she fell down dead. Then the queen looked at her with a dreadful look and laughed aloud and said, "White as snow, red as blood, black as ebony wood, This time the dwarf cannot wake you up again. And when she has the looking glass at home, looking glass on the wall, who in this land is the fairest of all? It answered at last, O Queen, in this land, you art fairest of all. Then her envious heart had rest, as far as an envious heart can have rest. The dwarf, when they came home in the evening, found Snow White lying upon the ground. She breathed no longer, and was dead. They lifted her up, looked to see whether they could find anything poisonous, unlaced her, combed her hair, washed her with water and wine, but it was all of no use. The poor child was dead, and remained dead. They laid her upon the bier, and all 7 of them sat around it and wept for her, and wept 3 days long. Then they were going to bury her. Thank you. I got distracted. Thank you so much for the raid. Hi, I appreciate a lot. Welcome in. I was distracted, it was too good. And I am going back to it. We were saying, they led her upon the bier, and all 7 of them sat around it and wept for her, and wept 3 days long. Then they were going to bury her, but she still looked as if she were living, and still had her pretty red cheeks. They said, we could not bury her in the dark ground. And they had a transparent coffin of glass made, so that she could be seen from all sides, and they laid her in it, and wrote her name upon in the golden letters, and that she was a king's daughter. Then they put the coffin out upon the mountain, and one of them always stayed by it and watched it. And birds came too, and wept for Snow White, first an owl, then a raven, and last a dove. And now Snow White lay a long, long time in the coffin, and she did not change, but look as if she were asleep. For she was as white as snow, as red as blood, and her hair was as black as ebony. It happened, however, that a king's son came into the forest, and went to the dwarf's house to spend the night. He saw the coffin on the mountain, and the beautiful Snow White within, and read what was written upon it in golden letters. Then he said to the dwarf, "Let me have the coffin. I will give you whatever you want for it." But the dwarf answered, "We will not part with it for all the gold in the world." Then he said, "Let me have it as a gift, for I cannot live without seeing Snow White. I will honor and prize her as my dearest possession." And as he spoke in this way, the good dwarfs took pity upon it, and gave him the coffin. And now the king's son had it carried away by his servant on their shoulders. And it happened that they stamped on over a tree stump, and with the shock of the poisonous piece of apple which Snow White had bitten came out of her throat. And before long she opened her eyes, lifted up the lid of the coffin, sat up, and was once more alive. "Oh heavens, where am I?" she cried. The king's son, full of joy, said, "You are with me," and told her what happened, and said, "I love you more than everything in the world. Come with me to my father's place. You shall be my wife." And Snow White was willing and went with him, and their wedding was held with great show and splendor. But Snow White's wicked stepmother was also bidden to the feast. When she had arrayed herself in beautiful clothes, she went before the looking glass and said, looking glass on the wall, who in this land is the fairest of all?" The glass answered, "O Queen, all of all here the fairest are two, but the young queen is fairer by far, as I trow." Then the wicked woman uttered a curse, and was so wrecked, so utterly wrecked, that she knew not what to do. At first, she would not go to the wedding at all, but she had no peace and must go to see the young queen. And when she went in, she knew Snow White, and when she stood still with rage and fear, and could not stir. But iron slippers had already been put upon the fire, and they were brought within with tongs, and set before her, when she was forced to put on the red-hot shoes and dance until she dropped down dead. You're a weirdo with your prize, Prince. Slightly. Slightly. We did it. Tips. We reached actually 60%. I don't know if Sydney and Johnny ever saw that all the first part is 60% of the ebook. You had such a nice voice, Popcorn. Oh my god, thank you so much for saying that. I am so self-conscious about my voice. So like my talking and reading in general. So I do appreciate you saying that so much. This is such a great idea. We read 3 stories today. We read Mother's Holle, we read The Elves, there was a 3 story itself, and then we read Snow White. That means that if you enjoyed this format, we could soon, right? Yes. We can put it next week. I should be free on Friday. Maybe we can switch a gaming stream and doing part 2, of course. Peeps, thank you so much for being here. I'll talk to you soon.